been a massive rescue effort, including about 1,000 personnel, including rescue teams from the United States, Britain, Australia, Japan. It had been hampered by heavy rains. But let's go now to our correspondent, Howard Johnson, who's at the scene. What more can you tell us, Howard?
Hi, Ben. Yes, in the last hour, we've heard from the regional governor of Chiang Rai province, the area in which this cave complex is in. He said that a team of Navy SEAL divers had reached the boys and their coach. All 13 of them are alive. They were found 400 meters from an area that they'd been heading towards called Pattaya Beach. Pattaya Beach was is a sandbank, a raised sandbank within the cave complex, and that gave people hope that if they could get to this area, that perhaps they could be above the floodwater. Now, they've been found at the moment. Medics are assessing their health. The Thai Navy SEALs are also there. They said it will take 4 hours to work out if they're in any condition to move.
And this has been, Howard, an absolutely enormous rescue effort, hasn't it? And it's just built up and grown over the last few days.
Yeah, I got here around 5 days ago, and I've seen it build up in those 5 days. I've seen more people come from different international organizations, different armies, different volunteer groups. The area next to the cave grew, but the Thai authorities did well to organize it. We saw, as the week went on, more cordons got set up. And the effort was three-pronged. They were pumping water out the cave every night, and the levels were going down. That helped the search and rescue guys inside the caves going through them. The divers found it easier when the water levels came down. But there were also a group of people, hundreds of people, scouring the jungle above the caves to see if they could find a hole down. But it seems that the way to find the boys was through the water and to dive through, and that's how they were found this evening.
And this has been a story that's gripped the nation, gripped the world in a sense. I mean, these 12 boys and their football coach, nobody knew if they were still alive, if they had any food, any clean drinking water, how much longer, if they were alive, they could survive. And it really was this race against time by the divers and the rescue teams to get there and to get to the boys.
Very much so. When I was actually going to bed this evening when suddenly I heard whoops of joy from within the hotel. It's been a long day here covering the story, so I got out of bed and went down into the reception area, and there were the staff in the reception drinking, happy, watching the TV. This is definitely going to be all across the news here in Thailand. People have been on Twitter all week talking about it. This is a massive story, and it's great news for Thailand this evening.
All right, Howard, thank you very much indeed. That's Howard Johnson there in northern Thailand. Just to say then, just to recap what we know so far, which is that the governor of the local province where those caves are in northern Thailand has said that the boys, the 12 boys and their coach have all been found alive, all 13 of them. They disappeared back on June the 23rd. During an outing to the Tham Luang cave, and then nothing was heard of them for 9 days. And in that time, there has been that growing effort to try and find them. 1,000 personnel, rescue teams from the US, from Britain, Japan and elsewhere, trying to get to them, bringing in pipes to pump out the water, bringing in expert divers, including these divers from a Thai Navy SEAL unit, elite divers who were at the forefront of the effort to find the boys. And it seems likely it's those Thai Navy SEAL divers who actually did manage to reach them. And doctors had always said that the boys could survive for quite a few days without food if they could have found enough clean water, enough drinking water. So it seems that they may well have done that. And an extraordinary story, extraordinary dramatic story that after all those efforts, it seems those 12 boys, young boys, have been found along with their football coach alive. We don't know what condition they're in. We'll bring you more from Thailand just as soon as we get it. And just to recap what we know about the story, which is that rescuers in Thailand are now saying that they have managed to get through thick mud, the water, the winding crevices of that network of caves. in order to find those boys aged between 11 and 16 since they went missing with their football coach 9 days ago. We can talk now to Andy Evis, who's a former head of the British Caving Association. Andy, thank you very much indeed for being with us. Just give us an idea, if you can, about how hard it would be for divers to get into a network of caves like this and to find boys like these who've been trapped in there and to find them alive.
Well, I think they had a very, very good chance of being alive. It was what condition they were in or are in is more of a problem. And I haven't heard back yet. And I don't think anybody in this country has really heard back yet. But there was every chance that they were going to find somewhere above water and not actually drown. And the air will be fine. They won't have rock falls. They've obviously got plenty of water to drink. I mean, it might not be the most wonderful water, but it won't kill them. They would be very, very hungry. But the biggest problem they will have is the darkness. They potentially have been there for 9 days in the darkness with no light. I mean, I don't know what light they started with. They obviously had some torches and hopefully they had some mobile phones. So although the mobile phones won't have been any use to communicate, they will have been useful as means of illumination. So if they've got some sort of organisation between them and they haven't panicked, they should be able to ration their light and get around the darkness. But if you imagine being in complete darkness in an unknown place with water rising around you, and the darkness will potentially have been their biggest problem. The biggest killer would have been if they panicked and tried to get out and drowned or gone over a precipice or something like that. The problem with the divers is that although it's not such a complicated place, it's not quite the same labyrinth that many other caves are. It's a fairly linear cave and there's only a couple of passages. So the divers will probably not have had a lot of trouble with route finding, perhaps none at all. But the current will have been a problem. These are huge rivers. This is the wet season. Unfortunately, the boys shouldn't be there. Half the year it's very dry, half the year it's very wet, and this is the time when it's very wet. And they just caught it badly and were unfortunate, but they were unwise to go beyond the show cave, which is what they did.
And we were hearing that it was really a race against time because of potentially heavy rains coming later this week, which would have raised the water level. And that could have been a real problem, even if the boys, as you were suggesting, might have had, backpacks with some snacks, maybe some clean water as well.
Yeah, the water level was always the great problem. I mean, in a previous interview, I was asked what's the biggest problem? The biggest problem is simply rain and rising water levels. I don't know the detail, and the 3 guys we've got out there, who are 3 of the best cave divers in the world, 2 of them are probably the best cave divers in the world. They were exactly the right guys for the job, and I will bet anything they're the ones who have gone through and found them. Now, they can only do so much with the water levels. If the current's too strong, you can't swim against it, and however good you are, you can't swim against a huge current. So I suspect the water levels have dropped adequately for there to have been airspace in the siphons that they had to get to the chamber where these boys were, and that's enabled them to get through by bolting along the walls or along the roof or whatever. So that's likely to be the situation, but I'm guessing really. I don't really know, and I'm not coordinating the rescue. We have a British Cave Rescue Organisation who are coordinating it from this country, and I spoke to them a few minutes ago, and they didn't know the current situation. Our boys out there are obviously too busy rescuing rather than talking to the media or talking to us. I do hope when they come out they will give interviews, and from this end we will suggest that they do give interviews, but they're likely to be exhausted. I know they've been underground a long time. The rescuers have been underground a long time, let alone the boys. So what state they're in for giving media interviews, I don't know, but we'll soon find out, I think.
Just very briefly, because we don't have too much more time, but I mean, you were talking about those 3 British cave experts, those divers. They might have had to get through a lot of water, to swim through a lot of water to, if it was them at the forefront of this rescue mission, to get to the boys.
Absolutely. I think it'll probably be the current in the water which has been the biggest handicap to the divers. When they dive in Britain or in Europe, they use scooters. They have high-powered underwater scooters, but they haven't taken scooters out there with them. If they probably regret not having scooters, maybe they're even trying to get them out there. But in this country in Europe, they use scooters. The distances they go underwater are extraordinary, and they now do it very safely. You know, your viewers will think it's it's foolhardy and dangerous. It's no more. They do it incredibly well controlled, very, very safely, and they know exactly what they're doing, and they have backup systems on top of backup systems. So they do it very well. And as I say, the two of the guys out there are probably the best in the world. They've certainly got all the records for distance and depth, and doing it a long time. You know, they both, Rick and John, have been doing it for many years, and they are the best there is at doing this sort of thing.
Fascinating to talk to you. Thank you so much for shedding light on that rescue effort. That's Andy Evis there, who's former head of the British Caving Association, just talking about the British aspects of that rescue mission in Thailand. Thank you.